to host this conference here today. Europe has been the leading region in terms of R&D for a long time and still is today. However, we must not ignore the strong increase of R&D in Asia, particularly China and America. We must remain competitive in today's world. We must work together as one, across all levels, across all countries, to ensure Europe continues on the path of excellent research into the future. As a regional chamber, we see our role in supporting local institutions, foremost our members, to help them better, to help them achieve their goals, not just in R&D, but overall. We have defined R&D as a key factor in our WKOÖ master plan. We seek out partnerships with local and international experts, whether that be the famous Ars Electronica, our local universities, or our members. We strive to provide new ideas, scientific expertise, and support that our community needs to continue on the path of excellent research. We know that only together we can make sure Europe remains competitive, remains innovative, and most importantly, remains the great place that it is today. On behalf of Doris Hummer, our president, I would like to wish you a very successful day. Use this time to push yourself and your company a little bit further.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Also a warm welcome from my side on behalf of the state of Upper Austria and the government of Upper Austria. So I want to join also Clemens Mahlener in thanking Paul Rübig for the initiative. I remember very well when we talked first time to organize this meeting here in Linz. And so Paul, again, thank you very much for this. It is also for me as a member of the government who is responsible for concerns of competitiveness of this business location, opportunity to address issues and topics which are strongly linked with the agenda of today as well. And the European Institute of Innovation and Technology is for us a good partner, hopefully also for the future, to tackle these challenges along our way in the face of digital transformation. And so research and science will be a key factor, crucial also for our competitiveness. So far, we are not directly involved in projects and programs funded by the EIT. But on the other hand, as I see that a lot of and the numerous well-known stakeholders and entrepreneurs also joined us this morning, I'm strongly convinced and confident that we will succeed also to join programs and being involved programs funded by the EIT. Within the last years, the investments flowing to Austria from the EIT have tripled. So this is for me a good perspective, and we will carry on this development and also support this. And let me mention at this point our plan and our submission of a project for the last call of the EIT in the KIC. The project called Menu 1 concerning added value manufacturing, which is in fact a very important issue also for this location. Upper Austria is a strongly industrialized region. It is the heart of industry in Austria, and also has strong ties internationally spoken, and we are linked to many markets, as this is also the place where more than 25% of Austrian exports going to international markets from Upper Austria. 70% of our exports go to European countries. So this gives us also the perspective and opportunity to join programs of the EIT. This project, Menu 1, brings together 23 companies with a combined turnover of 73 billion euros, with more than 350,000 employees. So quite a big consortium, which is also industry-led, and a lot of Upper Austrian companies and research facilities are involved. And I hope we will succeed within the call. The Upper Austrian government is willing to support financially the building up of an innovation hub location here in Linz. And so I hope we will get along with this, as scientific research is one of the drivers of competitiveness, also for a region, industrialized region like Upper Austria, and a core element of our future success in the face of digitalization. So that's the idea behind, and we are strongly committed to further cooperations with European research institutions, universities, and also cross-border collaboration, where the EIT with its programs is a key incubator for this. So again, I wish to thank all the representatives of the EIT coming and joining us this morning and taking your time to present your programs and your initiatives. And unfortunately, I have to leave due to further obligations in Vienna, but I realized there is really a broad interest in all the issues on the agenda, so I'm convinced this will be a productive and successful day. So thank you again for coming, and I'm looking forward to joint and collaborative projects and cooperations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Governor. You just presented a very interesting project from Upper Austria, a good idea, which will come true, I'm sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are very happy that Eva Kaili is with us. Welcome, and give a big hand of applause to Eva. Because she will be the first one with the keynote today in this room. I want to tell you something about her. First, we are happy that she's with us. She was elected member of the European Parliament 2014, is head of the Greek Social Democrats delegation in the European Parliament. She's very forward-thinking, one of the politicians we really need in Europe. She's been working intensively in promoting innovation as a driving force. Eva Kaili was very active in the fields of taxation, blockchain, health, big data, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. Key issues. Her political roots are in PASOK, the Pan-Hellenic Socialist Movement. Eva Kaili studied architecture, civil engineering, and European politics. Currently, she's conducting her PhD in international political economy. Eva, you will tell us something about blockchain technology. That's not easy, but I think this is one of the key issues of the future. So, once again, a big hand to Eva.
Let me first say that my schedule said 9:30. The updated schedule said 9:15, so it was on time. And as a Greek, this is not easy. So, thank you for having me, and nice to meet you all. I'm happy to be here. It's more sunny than Brussels always here. Let me thank you for the kind words, and I want to thank Paul Rubik, because you said I'm a social democrat, but I would say we are so close to the center, the progressive Europeans in the European Parliament, that we don't disagree, which is worrying. We have to make up something. And we've been working together at the Science and Technology Options Assessment. It's a think tank, basically, of the European Parliament that deals with the emerging technologies. And Paul has been the chair forever, so he managed to make it very influential. He's very strong, and he has an impact wherever he goes. So he managed to not only change the future of R&D, but also the budget lines. He's at the budget committee, so the numbers, and you know how important that is. This means he managed to enhance its power and its influence, and also now working on several files to improve that, like Horizon 2027. Basically, the next 7 years, from 80 billion that we're going to spend in Europe, trying to basically expand it and reach 160, we said. 120, we insist. And if we get 100, it's still an improvement from 80 to 100. So you know how that goes. But what is really important is that he's trying to take everything and take it through innovation, which is more important. So when we say agriculture, we don't just reduce the budget, but we increase the budget of smart agriculture. So basically just changing this code, it shows the will of Europe to innovate. And my files, as you mentioned, they are close to emerging technologies that are also very exciting for me. It's blockchain and artificial intelligence, mainly, and the impact that they have. We had a meeting in the Parliament, so we were not more than how many we are here, no, maybe less. We were talking about the future and automatic cars, electric cars, autonomous vehicles. And the chair of the meeting said, oh, well, we don't need to figure everything out now. It would take us 50 years. We have time. Like, 50 years for what? For the autonomous vehicles. No, but they're already out there. I said, no, they're not. Oh, yes, they are. So just wanted to say that in the European Parliament, it's not easy to inform about the radical changes that are actually taking place now. Some people think that autonomous vehicle will come in 50 years, AI will come like in 100, and blockchain is something that CIA is behind it, like mathematics can be controlled or algorithms can be controlled. So it's not easy to improve research and innovation in the European Parliament, because you need also to have support. What we've realized besides that is that AI is already there. People are scared of losing their jobs. We had a meeting, a very interesting event with ILO, the International Labour Organization, telling us that when the ATMs came to the banks, everybody thought the bankers would lose their jobs. Everything's going to be automatic. Actually, they had more jobs. And we thought that this could happen also with AI, so get different jobs, but more jobs. I would say that this is not exactly the case. So ILO identified the lack of digital skills. So this means that we will increase inequalities of the salaries, and also that people that have digital skills will have jobs. There is huge demand, but the people that don't might actually need for us to come up with a minimum wage, a minimum income for them. So we have to make sure that they will not be afraid that the AI is going to take their jobs. And because of the new social media and globalization, we think everything is happening outside our door and very fast. So I think this fear was also part of the reason why we have these interesting results like Brexit and Trump in the US, because the fear, the manipulation, the fear, rage, and as Fabio said, it's also envy of other people, because you see, videos of incredible lives and huge inequalities, and people feel that this is not fair, and they are angry, and anger can actually lead us to bad decisions. Also, in the parliament we have now GDPR, and this means we are identifying who is the responsible for our data. But GDPR is not fixing the misperceptions of the algorithms. So you understand there is transparency of algorithms for the ones that understand them. But if a citizen opens his Facebook or Google and you have personalized newsfeed, so you see the news that you're interested in, so you check Austria all the time, maybe you think it's the center of the world, like Greeks do, for Greece. But there is a different world out there with big issues. If you see just migration problems, you think it's all about migration. And if your newsfeed was not personalized, maybe you would have a different perception of how the world works. So we have to fix also how these algorithms have, by default, an ethical code and give us a clear perception of what's happening out there. So maybe go back to a normal newsfeed every now and then, so that you can see that it's not just a scary world, but it's also a world where Europe can give us hope. And of course, there are ethical issues that we should include, like who is responsible. We are still trying to figure out if an accident happened, who the responsible would be. Should there always be a human? Is it just an accident and you have insurance companies? And if somebody discriminates you because you Google search that you have a chronic disease or your family has it, and suddenly you're excluded from your insurance company, I think you would want Europe to do something for you. And improving that, I think we're going to make people feel more safe. So we just need a new strategy of data governance, which means we have to have good quality of data but protect privacy of citizens. It's not easy. It's not easy even for the scientists to do that. So we have to make sure that you will not be discriminated, you will have quality of life. With Paul, we've been traveling the world, and not for fun. They don't let me exit the hotel or the conference center. So basically we have constantly meetings. And we saw in China, for example, that mass surveillance is something that they advertise. So they have photos of the crowd, and they say, we know everything about anyone here just by a photo. And on the streets, it's full of cameras. Maybe London too, but at least in London we know that if somebody realizes that he's being followed and he's not like a terrorist, then he can do something about it. In China, you cannot. So in Europe, we are delaying a bit because of the regulation, and GDPR was like something that was controversial. But in the end, people need to know that they are protected. So their rights here are protected. And it's a whole new world because, as I said, even if you're a computer scientist, you cannot figure it out easily. So working also on blockchain, I think we have solutions from technology to protect our data, to know exactly when somebody enters our clinical data, our health data. If somebody's watching our video online, we might wait and expect to be rewarded directly and not through associations. We had a case of associations in Greece that they had all the artists and the people that wrote content, plays, theatrical plays. Everybody was part of one association that protected the rights. At one point, they found out that this association was giving them nothing from the agreements that they did with YouTube and other big platforms. And they were actually spending this money in a way that was not, that was really, really bad, like millions of expenditure, and for the artist, nothing. So with blockchain, removing intermediaries, you can have a direct contract with YouTube, an automatic contract, and nobody can change that unless there is a consensus or unless a specific percentage of participants will agree to change that. So centrally, no decisions can be made without your participation. If some of you have exchanged or downloaded movies online, free movies online, not the iTunes or the Netflix, but if you try to use torrents and exchange movies with friends, illegal basically, this happened without a central server. So everybody had video files and audio files on their laptops, but nobody could shut it down. They can shut down the site if they find who is it, but nobody can take back the movies, the files. So now blockchain is doing something similar to that. You can have smart contracts and value that you agree, and you can exchange it without a central authority, without intermediaries. So it removes a lot of friction. I don't know if you know the number that I usually say when I speak about blockchain. 130 billion, not million, but billions, are spent every year in Europe for hidden fees, transaction fees, from the banks, from paying your accounts, from paying your bills. Imagine if you remove this intermediation and friction, how much money we can save for research. And one problem that we have found out that we have in Europe is that we have huge inequalities in our countries. We have to bridge that. And of course, Austria, because you have a strong industry, especially Lynch, I found out. I didn't know, but it's very strong here. And you have amazing innovative companies. You have demand, so research is also in a very good level. But in countries like mine, Greece, where the industry is not that high, we just have services, tourism, amazing islands. To bridge that, we have to increase demand. It's not easy. We have to improve cooperation, and we have to motivate capital and investments in research. So that's why we have to increase that and improve the way we give away this money, this funding, because we need a European market, a European Union that will not have this kind of inequality, so that we can keep working together. And next mandate, we will have a parliament that can actually make decisions. So these kind of technologies, if we support them, maybe we can get some trust back to the system, and people will feel that they are in good hands. So I think this work we do is really important. And one thing that Paul likes to say, I mentioned Paul because it's really not easy to find open-minded politicians in the European Parliament, and not only. We try to give options to our colleagues of scientific data, and then they have to decide what they believe is best. You cannot tell them what to do. They have to decide. They have to keep in mind that they come from Austria, but they need Europe. So we compromise a bit, but still we have to work together, and we are stronger together. AI, if we don't work together, we are not competitive. At the first 10 countries of the world, no European country is there on the list. No, none. If you put Europe together, then we are competitive, and we have a huge budget now to do that. So I think I should not take more of your time. Maybe we have, yes, free? I can speak as much as I want. Not really. Okay, usually politicians are waiting, expecting to be stopped by somebody. But thank you for that.
This is Austria. We only have 2 minutes.
We do have 2 minutes, but not in our committee. We are free. And I was, when I realized, I was like, I came and I thought it was like 9:15 the start, and they told me, no, 9:11, everybody's inside. I said like, wow, you're like the Swiss people. And they said like, we're trying to be. Also last week I realized that Japanese, when they say on time, it's 10 minutes before. So we still have to improve a lot. Well, one thing I can say is that since I talk about Asia, I'm really worried that we are losing the competition in development, not research, but we are not keeping our scientists here. So we try to make sure that they will also give something back, because, you know, Carnegie Mellon, a big university with a huge robotics team, I think 2013, Google and Uber, or one of them, they went and they hired all the team, the robotics team, and suddenly this university had no robotics team, nothing, no professor, nobody to work and teach anybody robotics. So we have also to make sure that this will not happen. There is a huge demand for scientists, computer scientists that understand data and algorithms. It's not easy, especially if you want the good ones. Hopefully we will be working with Paul on the artificial intelligence file, trying to put some rules there. As I said, no discrimination, there has to be an ethical code, but at the same time, maybe we need to have a center in Europe that's going to be in-house and not just in the private sector, because then Google comes and buys it, and Facebook or some big company. So we have to have our own investments in AI and research to make sure that we can at least be secure. We're going to work to have our own intelligence and for the good, for citizens and not for profit. One thing we have to make sure that companies will not do is maximize profit. So if a car has to decide if it goes left or right, in the case of an accident, it should not maximize the profit for the insurance company. It should do something good for the person that's inside the car and in front of him. So this is not easy, because what the industry is trying to do is to maximize profit. When I talk to insurance people and I told them, you know, you wouldn't like your children to be in such an incident, right? I said, no, you're right. And after like 3-4 minutes of discussion, they say, but you know, we're a company. We have to maximize profit. So unless we put some rules there, we're not going to make it. And one way to put out these rules, it's by funding. So what GDPR did is it gives you big fees. You have to pay a lot of money, up to 20% of what you make, if you don't respect the rules. I think we can also work the other way around. So you don't get European funding, and we fund basically half the projects of Europe, the innovative projects, unless you follow some ethical rules, not strict rules, but some principles at least that protect our quality of life. And if we succeed that, then the flows of migration from Asia will be towards Europe and not the opposite. So people will prefer to get lower salaries and but have better quality of life and better privacy and be able to have a different protection of their human values, the ones that Europe is proud to have. So I think I will not speak longer, because I prefer to have like maybe some questions. I don't know if we have now or later.
I think if you agree, we will do that later. Do you have questions now? Might be easier because we have a panel discussion thereafter, and we have some time for questions then. Thank you so much, Eva.
Thank you.
So it's all about the people in Europe. It's not about the profit. Sure, companies have to make profit. We know we are in the Chamber of Commerce here. But it's also for the people, and that's why it's important to have the European Union, which is thinking some problems different to the guys in America or in China. The next issue we will talk about is the environment. I'm very happy that Kirsten Damlop is here. She's the CEO of EIT Climate KIC. And the EIT I want to tell you something about it. It was set up 2008. It's an independent body of the EU to boost innovation in Europe. As you might know, this year's Economics Nobel Prize was given to Mr. Nordhaus and Roma, scientists who gave us a better understanding in sustainable economic growth in context with the climate change and technological progress. And especially Europe is working very hard on the main climate innovation initiative, Climate KIC. Kirsten Dunlop is responsible for continuing to expand Climate's KIC's work supporting climate innovations across Europe, growing a world-class network of partners. Her career spans from academia, consulting, banking, insurance, design, innovation, leadership across 3 continents, Europe, North America and Australia. She is working to build a zero-carbon economy and a climate-resilient society. Welcome.
So I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time in Linz, so it's a wonderful opportunity, actually, as I came in last night and woke up this morning, to be curious about this part of Europe. I, as you hear, have lived in many places. I was born here, and I've lived in Italy for many years, but not so much in Germany and Austria, so I'm very keen to understand more. With your permission, I'm not going to tell you very much about Climate Kick. You will have an opportunity to hear about that this afternoon as part of the presentation, not this afternoon, the late part of the morning, as part of the presentations on the individual kicks. What I am going to do is represent to you the EIT community as a whole and the way in which it positions itself in the context of European research and innovation. What we are here to do, why we're here to do it. And I'm just going to leave a little bit of a flash forward to the panel conversation in terms of how the EIT will contribute and participate and the role it may play in the way in which the European research and innovation landscape develops in the next 7 to 10 years. So I'm going to make a little bit of an explanation of what we do on the understanding, or at least the assumption, that you may not know some of the elements of it. But if you feel that I'm covering ground that you know already, just gently wave at me and I'll move straight on and get to some of the more the future-facing questions. So let me give you a sense of why EIT exists and where it sits itself at the heart of the European research innovation ecosystem. We are about conversion of ideas into business models and market opportunities. Conversion of talent from the capabilities that lead to a deep understanding of problems and possibilities into the kind of capabilities that build businesses or come to work for businesses and build their competitiveness. Conversion of transformational possibilities into transformational realities. This is about a community of practitioners in the innovation space. So yes, we work deeply with research, but our focus is on converting that research as fast as possible into something that looks like productivity for Europe, competitiveness for Europe, and jobs and growth. In the case of EIT in particular, there is an opportunity here to look at the interface of those kinds of needs from a pure industrial perspective and from a national and subnational perspective, and the societal challenges that we know we also need to face, so that we can look at the interdependent opportunities around solving for climate change and solving for economic growth, which is where things get a little bit more complicated often. There are 6 of us, 2 of us coming soon, as you know well, in advanced manufacturing and in mobility. They are very different. One of the useful characteristics of the experiment that EIT represents in terms of Europe's competitiveness is that this is a portfolio of really different innovation models and positions. You have InnoEnergy actively, deeply building into building assets, energy assets and an energy portfolio of extremely competitive businesses. You have a Climate Kick working on systems innovation and catalyzing systemic change through a completely different way of thinking about how do we combine multiple diverse experiments and solutions in parallel around core industry models so that we can accelerate decarbonization. You have something like EIT Health and Food operating on huge, I need to move this, too much years living in Italy. So you have operating on broad-based citizen-led and citizen participation challenges, looking at how do we deal with the interface on issues that are fundamentally about individual choices as much as they are about policy choices. And we will have two exciting new entry points into the community, again operating on areas that are deeply interfaced with the existing KICs. So we have a challenge and an opportunity for ourselves to think about how do we build and amplify each other's efforts, and that's one of the ongoing opportunities in this whole community. There is something very distinctive about the way the EIT is set up. These are communities that are independent of the Commission. They are self-standing businesses. I run an organization. It's a Dutch organization, has 2 levels of governance. I have a supervisory board, which is an independent group chaired by a woman who's currently actually part of the World Bank. And I have a governing board, which is representing my shareholder, which is the members of the association. So I have a fully constructed independent business, accountable to both boards, accountable for performance indicators, accountable to EIT as a funder, but since we are also in a model which looks for these communities, these knowledge innovation communities, to stand themselves up as financially independent ecosystems building the European infrastructure for competitiveness, I also bring in funding from 40 other sources, and increasingly we are building up the portfolio of funding from multiple public, private, and investment sources. And that's true of almost all the KICs. The newer KICs are further back in the process, but increasingly the KICs that were started in 2009 and 10 are now running a full financial sustainability profile, which is partly investment capital and partly public and private funding. And that means that there is a freedom, and freedom here suggests there's something that's entrapment within an existing system, and that's not what I mean. What I mean is that there is an alignment, an opportunity to align behind the interests of the parties that join these communities to drive change and the needs that they serve, in a way that can operate with a commercial logic around mobilization, around excellence, and around delivery on impact, where we deal with grant funding mechanisms that require us to demonstrate value for money, but we are at the same time running the whole lot through a lens of productivity, impact, and competitiveness. The EIT complements the existence of KICs as independent units with what we call innovation hubs, which in many cases is a representation of many KICs operating in different areas where perhaps they are less fully present, or where there's an opportunity to look at synergies amongst the knowledge innovation communities. And increasingly this is something, for example, Climate KIC is particularly committed to working in Central and Eastern Europe, because we really need to be working with high carbon emitting areas of Europe to convert as fast as possible into, and ideally not only convert but leapfrog into really cutting edge decarbonized businesses and economic models and communities. And that means leveraging a model like this where we can represent into those regions faster than the rate in which we can be physically present in every single country. If you like, the newly appointed chair of the governing board of the EIT has been describing the EIT a little bit like a Swiss Army knife, in the sense of having multiple instruments, and there's some vivid debate about, the problem with the Swiss Army knife is that every single instrument has a small point of leverage, so is this a good analogy? And it's led to a very interesting debate about thinking, how do we account for the fact that this is a community of differences and unifying principles? For me, as an Australian coming into Europe, well, sort of Australian coming into Europe, there's actually something very European about this, an enormous power in the diversity of leverage within a unifying framework of intent and vision. And that is very much what these communities are about, and it's very much what the value proposition is in being part of the communities. You can access financial leverage, you can access follow-on capital, you can access the way in which the interface between innovation and policy, increasingly with JRC and with some of the other policy instruments within subnational areas, we are looking at how to create regulatory innovation, regulatory sandboxing, and translate the experience on the ground from innovation projects directly into understanding which are the 2 or 3 clauses in a body of legislation that would enable a scaling of new technologies or new process logics, rather than the waiting for the time to throw out the entire book of rule. You will see we are now present over much of Europe. In the case of Climate Kick, we operate in all European member states, and we are present in many of them. There are areas where the KICs are particularly strongly clustered together, in part because of the pattern of the partners and the consortia that formed around them, and areas where we are leveraged through something like the innovation hubs. And you will see also that there is a presence. The presence that's there represents the core program theory behind EIT, which is the bringing together of the knowledge triangle from education, from entrepreneurship, encompassing both startups right through to industry, R&D, and commercial innovation, and research. In the case, again, of the more mature KICs that started earlier, increasingly this is actually about a knowledge helix, because we are actively working with cities, with regions, with governments. We have just literally signed up one of the member states as a whole national agreement to accelerate very, very fast to a circular economy across manufacturing, forestry, food, farming, and urban living. So there are increasingly a much deeper set of integrations across, perhaps you could call it a knowledge cloud, the extent to which we bring together multiple points of opportunity and integration, and the relationships between research as an input, where that is most helpful, practice as an input, where that is helpful, implementation on the ground, and then the policy infrastructure and governmental mechanisms to accelerate those changes. EIT introduced a few years ago a scheme to accelerate the focus and attention in the EU 13, and you'll see now there is a huge build-up of investment. The objectives in these areas are to address acceleration of knowledge exchange, the building up of local competitiveness and local talent, the integration of knowledge triangle actors and knowledge helix actors within those communities and regions, and an encouragement of synergies, particularly through the smart specialization strategies across Europe. Again, speaking on behalf of Climate Kick, there is, for example, here a very keen interest to look at the opportunities in EU 13 nations to simply leave behind the last 20, 30 years of carbon-reliant industrialization, and to accelerate extremely fast towards digital technologies, artificial intelligence. In fact, a lot of the work that we are doing in these areas are where we have some of the most advanced smart contract, blockchain, AI projects, because they are unlocking and building alternative industries and alternative jobs for people otherwise reliant on traditional manufacturing and high carbon emissions businesses. And by minimizing the resistance to letting go of high carbon businesses, we can create a space for alternative energies. An alternative, for example, advanced manufacturing is one of the greatest opportunities in these areas of Europe. And then if I summarize some of the achievements over the last 8 years, there are now more than 40 innovation hubs across Europe. Many ventures supported. Ventures means fully constituted businesses. There are, in fact, many thousands of other startups. Climate Kick has supported has successfully grown more than 1,000 startups, but not all of them register as ventures necessarily. A lot of follow-on capital. And if you take a talent or jobs perspective, there is momentum really building. I think one of the things to remember is that this was an experiment. Europe set this up as a mechanism for equipping itself with a way of doing innovation that was both uniquely European and competitive in international terms. And we are now beginning to see, as with any startup, really the fruits of that kind of investment. So the curve is exponential in terms of what we're able to deliver. And this brings me to the question that I would be asking if I were you, which is, so what's in it for us? Why would we participate in this kind of thing? There are opportunities of different sorts for each different angle on the kind of interest in innovation that you may have. If I unpack some of them more specifically, for businesses, this is very much about a question, if I come back to that notion of conversion, where, why, and how does conversion matter? whether it's the conversion of new research or new product development into service lines or into business model acceleration, whether it's the conversion of marginal talent into high-profile capability, whether it's the conversion of interest from students who may or may not want to stay in university and are teetering on the brink of whether they stay in research, or whether they come to work in your businesses and have a period of their careers building your business and building their capabilities, whether it's the conversion of new business lines into capital-supported growth and market development, or it's the conversion of relationships with other organizations across the whole of Europe into deep, long-standing partnerships through platform mechanisms like the communities that these represent. For entrepreneurs, this is very much about access to a network, which has an amplifying effect. It's about building capability, it's about building adjacencies, it's about looking at creative collisions between the things that various people are doing across Europe. We bring in entrepreneurs, this year we brought in nearly 800 individuals into different entrepreneurial streams, and we run 32 accelerators across Europe. When you start to look at that as a whole system of effects, you can create opportunities for curiosity, for exchange, for sharing, and for co-shaping and co-business building that begin to be significantly valuable. And if you think about what Eva just said, not a single European nation is really competing internationally with other nations, but as an aggregate, we have competitive possibilities that few have, with an embedded diversity, significantly more resilient and significantly more creative if we leverage it in those terms. If you look at the outcomes, we do punch above our weight as an aggregate. So if you're interested in the Forbes 30 under 30, you'll see this year, last year, and for a couple of years prior, there are really high-profile results in terms of the outcomes from the EIT community. High-profile awards being won now by innovators from across the EIT community and the KICs. One of our challenges is indeed to make sure that they stay in Europe. And that, in fact, is one of the vivid conversations happening around the context of Horizon Europe. Having built them, nurtured them, and given them an infrastructure, how do we make sure that we really follow through? And, of course, one of the implications there is the interface between entrepreneurs and industry. How do we provide a context, bridges, quick connections in between creating the kind of cloud of startups, entrepreneurial energy, a sense of promise and possibility, and the fact that they might then invest that possibility in the businesses that are making us competitive and that still need to transform core business models to retain that competitiveness in a decarbonized future or a digital future. And we run, as a part of that whole knowledge triangle, knowledge cloud construct, a huge effort in education. If I take a climate perspective, one of my principal concerns is the extent to which we are training our children from primary schools onwards to think systemically. Because if we can't train our children, our teenagers, our young adults, our entrepreneurs, and our business leaders to think systemically, we will not solve for decarbonization in time. And this is one of the areas, for example, where we are particularly investing. On the other end of the spectrum, we run a lot of professional development courses. We deal with boards of directors, helping them to understand directors' liabilities with respect to some of the risks around climate and the risks in similar areas to do with digital, with health, and with mining and materials and so on. I'm going to leave you with a sense of the relationship between the question posed here and what EIT, the role that EIT plays in the European landscape. Europe, as I read the Lamy report, as I read Horizon Europe, again, as I leverage being looking from outside, slightly still, I see a set of impressively reflective questions about how the future of research and innovation should be conducted, about the relationship between the investments that go into research and innovation, leveraging taxpayer money, leveraging the levies on industry through things like the emissions trading scheme, and the outcome, the impacts. What do we need? What are we getting? Is it what we should be getting? And what I see in the patterning of those reflections is a call for a radical shift in our courage, in the boldness of our action, in our willingness to take on the risk and the opportunity of transformation, not incremental improvements, but breakthrough change, radical transformation, the kind of aggregated effect that we can have because we work in deeply connected, intimate ecosystems. I understand that this is one of those regions where there are deep and tight connections between companies, between individuals, and the possibility to mobilize collective action and systemic change. What I see in terms of what Europe is calling for is, how does Europe do something that China is doing but in very different ways? How does Europe do something in a European way? Transform, lead transformation, explain and show, but most importantly demonstrate what's possible, and do so in a way that does not leave anybody behind, that does leverage inclusiveness, participation as a mechanism for really unlocking a diverse participation in that transformation, not simply determine that this is as simple as regulate for change and those who can't make it don't. That's a unique opportunity, it's a unique challenge, and it calls for something rather special from what we're able to do. So my reflections were, the EIT plays a role currently of nurturing a supply of new business models, new ideas, new research, new solutions to problems into market. Increasingly, the learnings that we have from 8 years of operation is that that supply now needs to mature into deliberate, composed portfolios of action. So the supply now needs to get shaped, and increasingly all of the kicks are moving in the direction of shaping deliberate action around innovation that is tailored and customized to the need it serves. In the case of climate, that means really explicitly shifting the model to a focus on systemic change, and explicitly shifting the model to a focus on how we combine multiple parallel experiments and solutions simultaneously on the ground to accelerate decarbonization. In the case of digital, it's about composing portfolios around artificial intelligence, where we know we want to capture and build capabilities, and so on. So there is a real value in being able to connect innovation to a need. This is not innovation for the sake of it because it's a sexy thing and everybody likes it. This is innovation directed to outcomes, and that makes a big difference. This is about the possibility of insisting on cross-disciplinarity, on cross-boundary collaborations, cross-pollination, the liminal zones where those collisions that I referred to earlier produce extraordinary unlooked-for outcomes, and the kinds of collaborations that are possible in close-knit territories and in thinking about Europe itself as a close-knit territory, despite some of our political differences. And that gives us the opportunity for learning faster than others. The most competitive advantage we can possibly have is to learn faster than anybody else. We cannot provide solutions, it's the capability to learn. That gives us the opportunity to develop markets. The third point is around thinking about and recognizing that if there's one thing we have learned, and one thing that I think gives us an interesting edge on, for example, the US, innovation needs more than money. Innovation to achieve systemic change, transformation, citizen participation needs the conditions for enablement and empowerment, and that includes trust. It includes operating in systems where you are able to work with difference instead of despite difference. And that is very much at the heart of the IT system, the notion of creating orchestrated ecosystems, deliberately combining in. We, for example, look at we need to change construction in Europe. We need to do that within a very constrained time frame. It requires us to work with these 3 companies, because if we don't work with these 3 companies, nothing of what we do will have an impact. And so we go find them, we bring them in, and we work with them as a consortium. This is about providing support where support is most needed. I refer here to valleys of death because I see over and over there is an initial valley of death in terms of the excitement around early stage ideas. They get themselves up to the point where someone will put 50,000 into them. Then they hit a valley before they can really get to the first kind of tier of 1 or 2 million. But if you keep going through to 5 and 6, then you hit another valley. And you keep going. And one of the problems in Europe is the investment funds that will carry through to a certain point, and then there's another gulf. So one of the valuable mechanisms around having these kind of pan-European systems is the extent to which at every point of of dip in the system, we can plug solutions and look at where that's needed. And it also means we can explicitly address innovation to market failures with the courage to invest long and wait for the solutions that will take time to come through. And finally, I think the most important consideration of thinking about the experience of these ecosystems, these knowledge communities, and the innovation activity and experience so far is the relationship between empowerment of actors and the problem they're solving. And that is very much about creating coherence, about creating ownership and relevance, and about thinking of the kicks themselves as a portfolio that you join in order to access other mechanisms for leveraging change, whether that be policy, whether that be partnership, whether that be a bigger industrial ecosystem. Empowering that kind of action gives us a very, very different way of operating and gives us the possibility to genuinely connect knowledge through to action. I'm going to finish there. Thank you very much, and I will wait for questions later.
Thank you, Kirsten. We are empowered now. That was very dense, but very good and philosophical information and things where a lot of us have the point to think longer and to act with the EIT. So we're happy to have Professor Jan Menier also here today. He's just standing right on the right side of me. Jan Menier joined the European Patent Office 2016. He previously was a professor of economics in Paris. His research and expertise relate to the economics of innovation, competition, and intellectual property. In recent years, he has focused more specifically on copyrights, patents, trademarks in markets for technology, and his speech will focus on the role played by the patent system in supporting investment in R&D and technology diffusion in Europe. Hello, Professor. Good luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I would like indeed to use this opportunity to share a number of insights on the way in which the patent system supports R&D in general and in Europe in particular, and also on the challenges that we face in that perspective. And let me start with a very general consideration. This is a quote from a research paper, a research article published relatively recently in a major economic journal, and this is one of the most recent examples of a strand of other economic research that all consistently conclude the same. And in short, this conclusion is that for €1 of profit generated by invention in a company, there is another euro of profit, of benefit generated for the society as a whole. And this is why innovation and R&D matter for the economy. And the reason why there is such a high social benefit of innovation is that in the end, innovation is information. It's about creating new knowledge, new information, and once knowledge is there, it can be used by the inventor, but it can also be used by the rest of the society. And this knowledge will not disappear over time. We are still using knowledge that was created centuries ago. So, based on this very simple finding, there is evidence that the market alone cannot provide for enough innovation because companies will invest in innovation, but if they protect them, they will use secrecy. And so the role of public policy is to intervene and to promote more innovation, to make sure that the level of investment in R&D is up to the social benefit of R&D. And public support to R&D is a major lever here, but the patent system is another major part of the solution. And the great advantage of the patent system is that it makes it possible for innovation to become public, for this knowledge to become public. Let me develop that point shortly. When talking about the patents or IP, intellectual property, we usually have in mind the exclusive rights. In fact, this is one pillar of the patent system, but there is another pillar, which is the publication of the inventions. Any applications at the patent office must be published. So there are these two pillars. The first one is to support, to provide, to confer inventors with legal exclusivity during a limited time period that makes it possible to recoup R&D investment by making profits on the market. So this is what generates more investment in R&D. But the other part of the system is that all these applications become published, and they stay public once the patent lapses into the public domain after a maximum of 20 years, and this makes this knowledge exploitable by anyone, and this makes it possible for third party to build upon this knowledge. And the very value of the patent system consists in this combination of exclusivity and public disclosure of new knowledge. This matters for the economy, and one way to illustrate that is to look at those industries in Europe that make an intensive use of intellectual property in general and patents in particular. The figures you have here come from a study that was jointly carried out by the European Patent Office and the EU Intellectual Property Office, and where we aim to identify industries that make an above average use of intellectual property rights. And we came up with a proportion of 42% of GDP, meaning that those industries that make an above average use of IP represent 42% of EU GDP, and patent-intensive industries alone represent 15% of the GDP. They also represent 38% of jobs. And it's interesting to compare the proportion of GDP and the proportion of jobs. It's higher for GDP than for jobs, meaning that jobs in these industries are more productive. There is more value added per employee in these IPR-intensive industries, and this is not surprising because these are industries that innovate, that create more value added, and therefore that creates more value per employee. They are more, they generate more value added, are more competitive, and this is reflected in the other parts of the study. Because employees are more productive, they are better paid in this industry. There's a high wage premium in IPR-intensive industries as compared with other industries, up to 69% for patent-intensive industries. So they create good jobs, valuable jobs with skilled workers. And last but not least, these industries are the economic engine of Europe, and this is clearly illustrated by their contribution to EU trade. They alone account for the bulk of EU trade, about 86% of EU imports and 93% of EU exports, and they generate a significant trade surplus for the EU as a whole. So these industries, IPR is a cornerstone of industries that are at the heart, at the core of the European economy. And I would like to emphasize here that it's not only big industries or big companies, small and medium enterprises are also users of patents, and we observe the same type of results: higher value added, strong contribution to GDP, better jobs, when we look at SMEs that make a higher than average use of IP. And what is this use of IP? So I mentioned earlier this notion of patents as a means of exclusion, as a means of protection. This is true. This is a major function of patents, but today the role of IP in general and patents in particular is evolving, and it's not only about building fences. It's more and more about building bridges. Patents are tools that make inventions, that make technology visible, thanks to disclosure. There's a clear definition of intellectual property rights. And thanks to these rights, it's possible to trade knowledge. And now the R&D is coming to the age of trade, of division of labor in R&D. It's possible to outsource R&D. It's possible to buy technology in an intangible form, thanks to intellectual property rights. So patents not only protect, they also provide freedom to operate. They are tools for organizing licensing. They are tools for organizing collaborations. And they are increasingly tools to attract inventors, especially for startups and innovative SMEs. This is something that is already very developed in the US and that is now developing in Europe. Venture capital funds are increasingly sensitive to patents as evidence that the startup or SME has valuable protected technology that is worth investing. Let me give you one example drawn from a series of case studies that were published by the European Patent Office last year. This is Aerogen. It's an Irish startup that has become, in about 15 years, a global market leader in the market for aerosol drug delivery. So they have a breakthrough technology for aerosol delivery, and the entire development of this company has been accompanied by a smart patent policy. They have been betting from the outset on patent protection, and they illustrate very well the different functions of patent protection. Initially, patents were a means for them to gain recognition from their customers in particular. They have also been instrumental in attracting venture capital at the different rounds of funding. And now that the company has become a market leader, it is still an SME. It is a small company, and this is a typical example of these small companies that have a great technology, good protection, but not the scale to operate at the global scale. And the way in which this paradox has been addressed by this company is by establishing strategic partnerships. It has partnerships with companies like GE, like Philips, like Siemens, and actually Aerogen licenses out its technology to Philips or General Electric, who in turn sell the products in all the global markets. And this makes it possible for this company's technology to reach out to a very broad geographical market while remaining small. And conversely, this company is also betting heavily on research developed by universities. It has established a number of cooperations with universities to source in technology, and this again is made possible by patents. So this entire business model is turning around patents, and it's also worthwhile noticing that the main challenge today, or a major challenge today for this company, is to manage international protection. As it is growing global, it has to follow up with a broad global patent protection, and it's facing the complexity and cost of building up a patent portfolio at the world level, but also at the European level, because the European patent landscape remains fragmented. And this is the point that I would like to develop on in the second part of my presentation, the challenge of building a European single market for technology. And let me first emphasize why it is important. We have heard in the two previous presentations that one of the main assets of Europe is its diversity, and I fully agree. So European countries on an individual basis cannot compete with China or the US, but Europe, the European economy as a whole does, because it aggregates competencies, specializations that are diverse and complement each other at the European scale. And this very much echoes with a classical finding in the economics of trade and technology, which is that no country is able to innovate alone. Up to 90% of productivity gains actually come not from technology that is developed locally, but from the adoption of technology that was developed in other countries. And when we think about it, it's quite obvious. It's not possible for one country alone to catch up with the rest of the world. Most of the valuable inventions are developed elsewhere, and rather than reinventing them, the best way is to absorb them, to understand them and use them locally. So technology diffusion, quick technology adoption is a major challenge at the global level and a fortiori at the European level. This is why having a single market for technology matters. And how does such a market work? There's also strong evidence that the technology mainly flows internationally through trade and foreign direct investment and licensing. And all these market channels are highly dependent on patent protection. If there is no patent protection, I will not risk to transfer my intellectual assets, because I run the risk of being copied, very simply. So how does the patent system support such trade, foreign direct investment and licensing of technology in Europe? Well, I would say we are half of the way. As you may know, the European patent system has two levels. We have national patent offices and we have a European patent office. The European Patent Office was created in 1973, and today it has 38 member states, so it's larger actually than the EU. And this system makes it possible to find a single patent application at the European level, which is examined centrally by the European Patent Office, and which, if granted, can then be validated in the different member states. This was a huge step forward. This generates economies of scale in examination. This results in higher quality of patents, because the Patent Office, the European Patent Office has 4,000 highly specialized patent examiners who really know very in detail their technology fields. And this is a very important asset today already in the context of the transition towards digitization and technologies such as AI and blockchain. We are facing a shift of innovation towards software, and it's very important to have a consistent and quality-oriented approach to these technologies at the European level, and the European Patent Office is driving this transition with a conference on AI earlier this year, and a conference on patenting blockchain in a few weeks. So this is already a strong asset, but the building is not completed yet. With the current system, where patents granted by the European Patent Office must be validated in other countries, there are still significant costs of translating these patents into national member states' languages, of formally, legally validated them at the national level, and paying for the renewal maintenance of the national patents that results from European granted patents. This, in practice, generates costs of extending the geographical scope of patent protection, and many applicants actually do not validate their patent all over Europe, meaning that usually inventions are not protected over the entire European single market, meaning lost opportunities in the countries where patents are not validated. Finally, because inventions are eventually protected by a bundle of national patents, this means that any litigation may be run in parallel in different European countries, which is a source of cost and complexity, especially for small players such as small and medium enterprises. In a study published last year, we have tried to quantify these costs. And we first came with the observation that in practice, most of the patents granted by the European Patent Office are in fact validated in only 3 countries, the 3 biggest countries, Germany, France, and the UK. And then they are much more seldom validated in the other countries, meaning that most applicants do not have access to protection in these countries first, and that these countries, these smaller countries, do not have access to some technology transfers because of the lack of protection. Imagine, for instance, the case of a university that has not extended its patent in a small country and will not be able to set up a collaboration legally with an entity in this country. So starting from there, we measured what would be the impact of a full harmonization of patent protection in Europe, and in that case of a full alignment with the best standard of patent protection existing in Europe. The conclusion is reported here. A full harmonization of the patent system in Europe would boost high IP, so technology-intensive foreign direct investment in Europe, and trade as well. And the benefits range from a gain in 15% at the entire EU level in the level of foreign direct investment annually, and 2% in the level of high IP trade at the EU level. These benefits would mainly accrue to small countries in Europe where currently European patents are not validated. And this leads me to the subject of the unitary patent, which is precisely the solution to that problem. So as you may know, the European Patent Office is preparing for the entry into force of a unitary patent, which will make it possible to obtain, with a single European patent, automatic protection in up to 13 European member states, without any further validation or administration costs. This will significantly reduce red tape, lower cost, and extend the geographic protection of inventions in Europe, triggering more flexibility to enter new markets, more opportunities for licensing and cooperation, especially for SMEs and universities, and better arguments for SMEs or startups to attract investors and venture capital. In addition, since national patents will be replaced by unitary patents with a unitary effect, there will be centralized litigation in a unified patent court that will make it easier to enforce these patents on an EU scale, and that will especially be a game changer again for small actors who cannot afford playing the litigation game at the European scale in parallel in different countries. So this, I will conclude on this as time is running. In short, the point I would like to highlight is that R&D definitely matters for economic policy in Europe. Patents are instrumental not only in rewarding R&D, but also in organizing R&D and organizing a market for innovation. We need such a market for innovation in Europe, a single market for innovation. The patent system will be instrumental in creating this market. The quality of the patent system is there already, but now we need to harmonize the protection to have wider geographic protection, and the unitary patent will be the solution to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor. We learned a lot about patents in Europe. So, ladies and gentlemen, the last keynote will be conducted by Ulrike Radmer-Koller, President of the European SME Association, UEA, PME, and Vice President of the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. In December 2017, Ulrike Radmer-Koller was re-elected for a second two-year mandate as President of the European Association of Craft, Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. She's the owner and general manager of the family business Radmer Group, an internationally operating SME active in the area of construction and environmental technology. In February 2018, she was invited by the European Commission to be a member in the high-level roundtable Industry 2030 and to contribute to the future EU industrial policy from an SME perspective. She serves as a vice president of the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. And yesterday she met Donald Tusk. I saw it on her social media, and they were talking about the future of small and medium enterprises. Today we will talk a different issue. President Radmer-Koller will speak about the Future Horizon Europe program and how we can ensure that SMEs can benefit from and have high access to this program.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, so first of all, I would like to say that I'm very happy to be here. It's my hometown, and therefore I congratulate also Paul Rübig to organize this event here in Linz, that we have the possibility to discuss how important innovation and research and development is for Europe. And I'm representing actually 24 million SMEs in Europe. And I think I would like just to emphasize about the importance of SMEs at the beginning. It's not only that 99.8% of all companies in Europe are SMEs, they are also, if it's related to the industrial sector, which in most cases is always combined with big companies, with big international groups. There are 1.2 million companies in Europe which are related to the production sector, related to industry. And also here, 99.5% of those companies
are small and medium-sized companies. And especially the region here in Upper Austria shows that we have a lot of very innovative small and medium-sized companies who are active with their innovations and innovative products worldwide. And they're in some areas also niche players and also world champions with their product. So of course, R&D, innovation is the key to success, and especially for Austria, but especially for Europe. If we compare us with other regions, we have to make sure that Europe stays competitive and really make sure that we are ahead of other regions, and it stays like this. And Mrs. Kalli already said that if we look to Asia, if we look to China, in some areas we are not the front runners anymore. So we have to make sure that we keep and stay ahead, but we have also some sectors where we are front runners. And this we have to also improve, and there we also have to invest a lot in research and development. But we also have to make sure that as I said at the beginning, most of the SMEs are able to take advantage of research and development projects and also on fundings. SMEs are not only the highest quantity of the companies, they are also providing 67% of all jobs in the private sector in Europe. And they provide actually 93 million jobs. And if you also consider the crisis, actually SMEs were the ones who created 85% of all the, or provided all the newly created jobs. So during the crisis, the big companies set people free. SMEs actually hired new people. And this is also why SMEs are really the basis for growth, for job creation, and also welfare in Europe. And so, of course, we have to make sure also that the transfer of excellence of science is really made also into innovative solutions, and so that also our companies, and especially SMEs and the society as a whole, take advantage out of it. And we have, I think, not many of you know it, but for example, the digital photography. It was actually developed in Upper Austria. But because of the business environment or the possibilities of funding, of access also to finance, brought a problem. And then actually Asia was leading in the digital photography. And this really shows what is really the problem with innovation, with research and development. And I also would like to thank Professor Manier to really point out how important the patent system is also for this. We need, of course, securing these developments. But if you compare again, for example, US and Europe, in US you have one patent, one US patent. And in Europe, it is very difficult to really apply in all countries. And so it is really important to have a united SME or a united patent here in Europe. And it's not only the patents, it's also the standardization. There we also need to improve, and we need a common Europe to be able to be competitive also in the future. And this we also try, of course, to reflect in the industrial strategy, where we are now also trying to really focus on the trends and how to develop these trends, the worldwide trends, into opportunities for Europe. And of course, SMEs are playing a very important role also in this sector. So SMEs playing an important role in innovation, but they also have some challenges. And I would like to now point out a little bit on our experiences with the past and also the current European research program, especially from the point of view from SMEs and innovative SMEs. So first, we have still an ongoing debate which SMEs should be supported by the European research programs and what can or should be done on the national level or on the European level. So here I say quite proud that also my organization reached a common understanding also with the European institutions that there is a three-pillar approach we should take. We need definitely a European program for projects with a clear European added value, which means projects that aim to reach out to the European market and are highly innovative. Second, we of course, SMEs and innovation has become a key priority for the use of regional development funds, especially in more developed regions like Upper Austria. And there I think we also show that especially regional development funds helped a lot here in Upper Austria to develop and to innovate. And third, the third pillar is, of course, the national and the regional governments are requested to provide the needed infrastructure for research and supportive environment to create an innovative business culture. So here, I think we are on the right way. And even if many regions could make more out of their European programs to strengthen innovation and technology development for SMEs. But they are, I think it is the right direction, but of course we have to make sure that in some regions where it's not done enough, also we push more to support SMEs. We have observed that the participation of businesses in the past European research programs went significantly down and reached only about 20% for the Framework Program 7, the predecessor of the current Horizon 2020. Because these programs had a very strong focus on research for universities and other institutes, and they did not aim enough for transferring the results of these excellent researches into innovation and business. So that's why we really asked also for all the new research programs to really focus on this transfer into business opportunities. I think this is the key also for the future. So this, of course, changed then with the current Horizon 2020. And I'm proud also that UAPME was really the driving force also so that these changes were implemented. And the current program focuses more on solutions, on the societal challenges and the leading technologies for companies. And this program also has a special SME instrument which really supports the innovation cycle and really makes sure that SMEs can take advantage of this program. So overall, Horizon 2020 has already changed the landscape and more companies, including SMEs, came back to the program. So we see the first concrete results with projects succeeding with the market introduction and also have access to private fundings. So the main shortcoming of Horizon 2020 and especially the SME instrument is that it's extremely low success rate. And we have, for some calls, below 5%. And this really has to be changed also in the future. Because if we convince, if SMEs apply, and then only 5% having a positive results, this of course also demotivates and is then the question, is it worth doing all the application if there is no funding then available? So here our recommendations. So here our recommendations are really that there is a better advice also on the national level about which projects have a chance to succeed and which should look for other programs. Improving, of course, the selection process, including interviews of applicants, because they can also explain the importance of the projects. And of course, also allowing successful applicants which were not financed because of limited budget to be supported at the same way at the national level without limitations from state aid control. And of course, what is very important also is that we reduce also the bureaucracy in the application process. So we need to make it simpler, or we have to simplify, of course, the programs. So against this background, let me speak now about how we see the new proposal for the European Commission in the MFF, in the coming multi-annual financial framework. So first, we welcome the even stronger focus on SMEs, and we really hope that this, especially in innovation and digitalization, in the proposal, especially in the next European Regional Development Funds, and also, as I said before, with its simplification measures, really will bring additional boost to SMEs in the R&D. And however, these funds will only succeed and to improve innovation if their operations are defined together with the business partner and not only by the regional administrations. So here we really need the input also of business organizations. So the next EU research and innovation program, Horizon Europe, tries to further strengthen its impact on society and competitiveness. And we fully agree with this, but we have to make sure that here it is also understandable for SMEs, so that it's not too complicated. And of course, we have to make sure that that these suggestions break up also the traditional silos and also will allow new innovative solutions. So the most interesting part of Horizon Europe may become the European Innovation Council with its two instruments. The Pathfinder aims to create new business ideas coming from universities, startups, and especially SMEs. And second, the Accelerator, which aims to bring SMEs with new business ideas to market and also helps to financing the phase until private investors or the InvestEU program can take over. So our main requests for improving the current Commission proposals are, and here I also address Paul Rübig, which supports us a lot, and he is always giving us a good alliance in promoting SMEs on the European level. And we really need to make sure that really this 20% participation of SMEs will also be in the new programs. Until now, it is not fixed. And we really have to make sure that there is a special percentage of the whole tool supporting SMEs. If we do not, then I fear that really the bigger companies will get the whole cake. And so therefore we have to make sure that this 20% are for SMEs secured. And of course that we have more SME-friendly calls and that those are then also promoted better to SMEs so that we have also then more applications. And we also have to avoid too restrictive and too technical definition of the breakthrough innovation, because this will discourage SMEs to apply, and then this will exclude them. So to conclude, as I said at the beginning, innovation is the driving force in Europe, and SMEs are actually the basis of economy in Europe. And so we have to make sure that a lot of SMEs will be able to take part in R&D programs and to innovate, and so that actually it's guaranteed that also Europe will be or will have a successful future also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Radmakolla. Are there any questions to our keynote speakers now? I mean, because we also have a coffee break. You can do it face to face, but there's one coming from the back.
Klaus Pertling, agricultural machinery manufacturer, and I just want to offer another explanation why SMEs are declining to applicate again. It's just too bothersome. If you just remember in your old class, they have been good in mathematics, and they always have been bad in languages. So then they have the people being good in languages, they mostly of the time they have been bad in mathematics. Herein we have all these good novel writers, we can all hold a speech, but if I look into the eyes of my engineers and say, please fulfill the application for that program, they are really, you know, it really hits them in their weakest point. So, and therefore, please, we will for sure agree that R&D is engineers' work. So, and the HR component is limited. And we will agree that there has to be some governance for funding, naturally. Please, just consider, and that would be an innovation in the funding process. Why not fostering on, is there a meaningful contribution by the applicant? Not fostering who has fulfilled that, and are the right words in, and are they proper setted, and we need a governance for an application. Naturally, that's clear, but an innovation in the governance would be the time to follow on.
Thank you for your contribution. Just make it easier. That's what you said just before. It's a very important point, and all the people coming from Europe will take that to Brussels. Thank you so much. Any more questions? I think we'll start a short panel discussion. I say short because it's shorter than in your program, but we are all hungry and thirsty, and I think we will bring it on the point in a very short time. I'm very happy to introduce to you Helmut Fallmann, who is board member of Fabersoft and a company co-founder. Welcome to the panel. Also this day, Roland Hindringer joins us. He's Vice President Technology and Innovation of the MIBA AG. And Michael Peters, CEO of Euronews, a news channel you really should watch more often. You get it on Astra Television, also in Austria, I think. So, I think it would be a good idea, as we usually know each other, but we don't know each and everything of you and your company. If you introduce yourself and your company so that we know what you are doing, and then let's talk about R&D. So I'll start with Mr. Fallmann.
Something on? Yeah, that looks good.
Looks good? Okay.
It looks good now. Hi, good morning. Helmut Fallmann, I'm founder and CEO of Fabersoft AG here in Upper Austria. So yes, Eva, you were right. Austria is not the middle of the world, it's Upper Austria. And Cyprus, I learned yesterday, Cyprus is also middle of the world. I'm in addition to running Fabersoft, I'm working with the European Commission since 7 years currently working in the area of free flow of non-personal data, Cybersecurity Act, leading a working group together with my co-chair, Borja Larumbide from BBVA Bank in Spain, to create a security certification scheme for cloud computing to build trust in cloud, which will act under the ENISA security certification framework. And that is really where we are in the middle of the world, because ENISA will be the central security agency for the coming decades here in Europe, and they have the important role for the digital single market, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. So very innovative Fabersoft, also innovative automotive MIBA AG, Vice President Roland Hintringer.
Thank you very much. Welcome to have the possibility to be on this panel. Yeah, my background is actually mechanical, mechatronic engineering. Also did some research in the US for 1.5 years in the area of electric motors. Started my career in the automotive business, and since 4 years I'm Vice President Innovation and Technology at MIBA. MIBA in Upper Austria, I think it's a well-known company. It's a typical automotive supplier with 8,500 employees. And currently we have slightly above 300 engineers working on advanced development and a few more engineers working on product development. So in a second role, I'm also a member of the board of the Austrian Association of Advanced Propulsion Systems, taking care of R&D in Austria, so bringing creating a network, bringing people together for R&D, focusing in the powertrain.
Thank you. Michael Peters, born in Flensburg, Germany, is the Chief Executive Officer of Euronews, and he had the idea for African News, and you're also President of African News.
Yes, hello everyone. So yes, Euronews is partnering with Eva and Paul on the Science Media Hub, and Euronews is actually reporting about European science and European research since more than 15 years through different programs. So this is one of the main reasons we were happy to be here.
That's wonderful. So let's talk about R&D in Austria. I have a question to all of you. How do you think, we are talking about leading the field and try to lead the field. Where's Upper Austria at the moment, and where should we be in some years?
In my opinion, Upper Austria is very, very advanced, and what we're currently learning is that information technology is within every field of technology. Within digitization, computer science is at the center of innovation, at the center of research in every application, in every place. And therefore, I think it's very clear that we can further advance Upper Austrian research and innovation by really doing what Eva Kalli just mentioned. She said, keep the talent in Upper Austria. And some of you will hate me for what I'm saying now, but I'm saying it publicly because I'm always the one who's the bad guy. If we have to keep the brightest talents here, it does not make sense to give applause to people who leave the university, to professors who leave the university and go to Google. This is not a great thing for Upper Austria. If you're losing a security professor who wanted to build a laboratory here and we wanted to build a significant piece of research on him, it's not good that we promise him that we keep his seat at the university for 3 years, because if we keep it for 3 years, and at the end of the 3 years he tells us he will not come back, it takes us 2 years to get a new professor, so we have 5 years without professors for IT security, and that is unacceptable. Yeah? So advancing up Austria is taking strategic decisions and not thinking that Google is the greatest company on the planet.
So, how to keep the talents? How would you do it?
I would give more funding to bright ideas. Mm-hmm. And as Klaus Pöttinger said, we need to work on this situation that our brightest talents are not the brightest marketing guys. And there are 2 dimensions on that. The one is, it is totally unacceptable that American companies, concrete example in my case, CSA, the Security Alliance, is using research projects for driving their marketing in Europe. Yeah? They are so good at getting funding in Horizon 2020 that they're using this money to really drive their business in Europe. This is totally unacceptable. On the other hand, it's unacceptable that we in Europe do not enhance our marketing, because in my opinion, technology and its application, and EIT is very good at that, the application of the technology in real business is one thing, but you need 2 more things to be really successful. One is you need design. And by the way, we have got that here. We have a university for design that is for arts that is great. But we need to integrate them in interdisciplinary projects, because we need this in my business, this is called user experience. We need user experience, because otherwise it will happen what happens in the kitchens today. People are buying KitchenAid products from the US. We Europeans were leading those product field, and currently it's going to them. In your field, you know that there is one big company trying to get all the data to them, which is John Deere. John Deere is the only power in the agricultural market who can drive the collection of all the data. So we Europeans need to understand the power of the data, we need to understand the power of design, and we need to understand marketing, and we need better, advanced, inspiring marketing professors at our universities.
Thank you so much. You know, Upper Austria, that's the state where we say the things how they are. Yeah? And I think in the automotive business, there's also a lot of competition, and you have to make good decisions for the next years. So, from your point of view, where do you see the future of R&D in your sector?
Well, maybe another comment to here, because I think it's definitely a matter of the ecosystem that you have. Yeah? Like we have it in Austria. We definitely have strengths in the industry. We have excellent, actually, university when it comes to informatics and stuff like that. I see Professor Affenzell over there, so having a great team. And it's also a matter not only how you attract the people, but also how to attract other companies. Yeah? And I'm very happy to have, for instance, the cluster in the Johannes Kepler University really attracting companies like Audi, doing artificial intelligence R&D here. So actually, you know, this is getting stronger and stronger. And once you have such a hub, yeah, you can really grow. And for me, it's a second thing, whether it's Google or Amazon. Of course, I would be happy it would be an Austrian or a European company. But most important is to really create an ecosystem to have really effective R&D. To be efficient. I think I was really happy today during the talks hearing exactly the points I have actually had up in mind during my preparation. Bringing the European patents under one structure. Yeah? It's a disaster what we have at the moment, to be honest. Yeah? But also to create some excellence. Yeah? You cannot do everything. The knowledge, and everyone who ever did research is absolutely clear, but so if you find one answer to a research question, you will raise 3 more questions. So it's exponentially growing. And you will never manage to answer all of these questions. Yeah? And definitely not with a university like the Johannes Kepler University or in a region without like Austria. So it's a matter of focus, yeah? Because if you take this focus, you can really be successful and you really create the lighthouse. And maybe one more statement, and also I liked it very much today of Ms. Dunlop because of the entrepreneurship, actually. Because we really have a lack of bringing the bright ideas that we create in the universities and in the research departments to the industry. Yeah? And this entrepreneurship spirit, I think that's a little bit missing, and it's also a little bit missing of this entrepreneurship in the European programs. Yeah? Because it's not really secured that maybe SMEs, but also big OEMs to follow up with that ideas and with the programs. They actually did very successfully, but then there is a huge lag in the industrialization, and we see it also in our business, that it's very hard to finance, for instance, something like fuel cells, yeah? Because we did great R&D work there, but actually now it takes longer than we expected that the market takes up. Yeah? So we're really thinking and discussing how we can finance the next 5 years, because it will take 5 years longer than we expected without the business. Yeah? So that's very, very difficult.
So there's, there you are waiting for help from the European Union, from the banks, from Austrian politics?
I think it's quite broad, but I'm a little bit missing the programs helping in the industrialization or bridging that gap. Yeah?
That was... We talked about that before, bridging that gap. Mr. Pieces, so you're the CEO of Euronews. You have very good view of Europe. You come around a lot, so you see the problems in every country, and you also see the possibilities from your perspective. How will Europe emerge R&D in the next years? Is it a good time for Europe?
Well, I hope so. I think it's probably indeed the time to speak much better about science and research. But I think that, first of all, before Europe, we speak probably about Euronews and how we, as a media and media in general, shall cover this domain maybe much better than we have done in the past. I think that's... if you look, I mean, contrary to sport, business, fashion, in the media, when you want to report about research and science, you need to report it in an accurate, fair, and understandable way, where you can see a close link with politics. I think that science has this strong link with and research and with the politics, is that you need to be in the meantime accurate and understandable. You know, I was searching the definition of research before to come here, so I found one coming from a guy that maybe you have heard called Werner von Braun, who is a German scientist. Was the immense privilege to have been, I mean, to died when I was born, so must be good. And so his definition of research is what I'm doing, when I don't know what I'm doing. And just to illustrate, so which here the parallel with politics, of course, is I mean, not at all to be mentioned. This is extremely interesting when again you are a media, and I mean, researchers, maybe sometimes like politicians, you know, are spending all their life or hours, let's say, in the day and the week to work on a lot of things, which are sometimes not really understandable by general public, let's say. And they are working so hard on that they are absolutely convinced that it's not true. That, of course, everyone absolutely understands what they are doing, not like politicians. This is why covering research and I mean is an extremely difficult exercise for media, because you could have, and a lot of medias are doing it, by the way. You could have the default of trying to sensationalize, you know, the things, because you know that the subject is a little bit, not say boring, but, you know, difficult to get on a general public. And I think that this is the main thing. And I think that on the other side, the researchers, the research organizations, everyone in this industry should equally help us in order to try to simplify as much as possible what they are doing. I think that this is all about the relation between media and the industry of research.
I think that's a very important point, because when you cover something new, it's very difficult for a journalist to say, is it really new? Is it really breathtaking? And the European Union launched the so-called European Science Media Hub, which makes that easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, and just if I may, just one thing, as you just said, I think that research and science is equally made about women and men, and I think that this is something that we need to explore and exploit a little bit more. You know, it's all about human thinking at the end of the day. I mean, and I think that we should put human more at the heart of the reporting of that. Yeah, so for the European Science Media Hub, indeed, we met with Eva and Paul a few weeks ago. So Euronews is trying to begin a strong partnership with this Science Media Hub, because we, as I said, you know, it's totally going into the DNA of our media, and I think that it's so important, I mean, to try to cover as much as we can the different initiatives. So that's why the main reason why I'm here. Of course, the main reason is my friendship for Eva and Paul, but then equally because I really believe into the fact that we should do much better. And I think that this initiative that maybe everyone knows in this room, correct, Paul? No? So I won't speak about it. I mean, I'm sure you will speak better about it, but this initiative coming from the European Parliament and associating funds in order to speak better, in a better way about science and research in Europe, makes a total sense for a media like us, and so I'm sure that in a very short time we will be able to show concretely initiatives and a lot of things that are done in this industry, thanks to the initiative of Eva and Paul.
Thank you for the time. Back to Austria. One word from you?
I would actually have a wish, because I really think one of the issues that we see with the European program is really a lack of information in the regions. Yeah? And it's really a disaster, because if you go, not only Austrian universities, it's the same in Germany. If you go and ask them, let's have, there is a European call, yeah? Let's go for a program, yeah? Well, too many administration and so on. Yeah? But I don't know, 5-6 years ago, it was the first time I was in Brussels and visited such a meeting. It's highly professional, it's really excellent, yeah? And you need to be very clear what is discussed there. Because if you do not meet actually the demand, you have no chance in the program. So, but it's not properly communicated. So I would really would be happy, yeah, if that really comes to a broader communication and reaching the regions with this very detailed information.
I need to say something about that, because it's even more. It's not just about the programs. The future of Europe is being made in Brussels, and there are all the important American Fortune 500 companies, especially the Googles, Amazons, and the Alibabas, by the way, are there creating the future of Europe. We, European companies, need to be there. Our chambers, etc., need to be there and create the future of Europe. And this is of utmost importance. And therefore, I can only really tell all of you that it is, probably you get the feeling today, this is one of the most inspiring events I've ever seen in Upper Austria. Thank you for the Chamber of Commerce for organizing it. This is an event where 3 brilliant ladies made inspiring speeches. I was in Alpbach yesterday at the Financial Symposium, and I sat on a podium with 7 men that I'm missing women there. Yeah, this is also great, Yeah, congratulations to this event. We should have more of those. But in addition to getting the events to Linz, we from Upper Austria have to be in Brussels. I myself tried to get our mayor of Linz and our Upper Austrian governor to Brussels regularly together, still trying to work on that. And I hope that at some point in time we'll manage to get that done, because that is important. Yeah, Europe is a Europe of regions, and in my opinion, again, I'm the bad one, the member states do not count. Europe counts, because Europe is the only entity that can compete globally.
So all of us should go more often to Brussels, especially the ones who can make a change. And you say that a lot of American...
Everyone can.
Everyone can. A lot of American big companies, they have a lot of money and they invest money in Brussels to get their ideas into Europe. And not Europe, regional, getting the ideas to Brussels.
Yeah, a lobbyist in Brussels being financed by American companies typically earns between 200 and 250,000 euros per year. Minimum.
Minimum, okay. So that are interesting insights. Let's go back to the EIT. How relevant are for you the opportunities we are talking about the EIT, the Institute of Innovation and Technology, for you as an Upper Austrian company, especially, for example, in the field of EIT?
EIT is a major opportunity for Upper Austria to really influence this European future, because they have the money and they have the insight that not research by itself is important, but it's the application of research in the business and making business with the research and protecting the intellectual property. And my personal passion is because most of Austrians, most of Europeans believe we don't have any chance in IT because IT, this is the Americans. And I tell you, this is wrong. Yeah? It's completely wrong. IT, the importance of IT is starting now, because the importance of IT is how you apply IT in banking, in insurance, in agriculture, in industry, etc. And Europe's best at applications. America is nice at building technology. Asia is good at building some chips and other things. They're quite good at manufacturing in the meantime, and I'm working with a number of companies from China and India, and they're really brilliant. But there is a fair chance for Europe to really dominate the high level of manufacturing, for example. European banks, by the way, are by far better than American banks. You can't imagine what the difference is. The American banks, if I send money to my son who studies in San Francisco, it takes me 4 days minimum. I pay 35 euros in Austria, and my son pays $50 in the US to get the money to his account. Yeah. In Europe, from this year on, end of this year, beginning next year, it'll take a second to put money from one account to another in any country of Europe. Yeah? So please understand, there is an opportunity to move Europe further. Having said that, my personal most important project in that is redefining what a platform is. The platforms in the US are currently dominated by, I call it the Googles, Amazons, etc., stealing your identity. Because Amazon is so successful due to two things. They have your identity, meaning it's easy for you to buy, and they have the long tail because you can buy anything you never... If you want to buy at Spar, for example, one of the biggest Austrian companies, they have a so-called sortiment that is like 40,000 things. Amazon has millions of things. So how can, and now you think, we can't achieve that, yeah? And instead of competing with them, we're using their data centers and putting even more money in them by using Amazon Web Services. Now, how can we compete? By building a European digital ID that is an attribute-rich digital ID, so that you can, at any small store of a European company, you go there with your digital ID and you buy what you want. And at the media, you buy media content, for example, without registering, without having a separate login and ID, because that's what's cumbersome and that's why we're losing. Yeah? We need that central digital ID, and as a basis for the platform, we need a transactional basis on the internet, which in my opinion is marketing speech, Bitcoin technology speech, would be distributed ledger technology, yeah? And hopefully something that is fast instead of slow, and that is a research thing, but we need a transactional basis. I think we can agree that we need a transactional basis on the internet to get contracts done, to get, to be able to buy, etc. And of course, I'd like to harmonize the tax system.
Many good ideas.
VAT.
Many good ideas. Thank you so much. How would you think that specifically EU institutions could help the regions like Upper Austria with R&D?
Well, I think it's a matter of having the full picture, because for us, of course, it's the highest impact at the moment is CO2 and Paris 2050 and stuff like that. So the automotive industry is really struggling with that, and you get it off the media every day, so I don't need to elaborate on that. And it's a very political-driven process that we see, actually. Yeah. So because, for my opinion, the customer at the moment, yeah, well, is interested in the technology and so on, but it's not really pulled by the customer. So it's more pushed by the politics at the moment. And I'm okay with that. And of course, politics need to give a vision and need to give some mission focus, which is also the focus in the European program, at least in the next one. But on the other hand, it needs also to be secured that there are the possibilities, yeah, to create new technologies, to do R&D, yeah, which takes money, which takes time. Yeah? And I think that's a very, very important task for the European Union, bringing this together and not leaving us alone, yeah? With big problems in financing, in R&D and stuff like that. And yeah, so, and coming back to the regions, because companies like MIBA with, yeah, a little bit more than 8,000 people working for us, we are a small company, yeah, on a global perspective. Yeah? And we are in the regions. Yeah? So we, of course, having a few connections to Brussels, but again, how to bring that in the regions is absolutely decisive. To also make the strengths that we have in Upper Austria, also in Italy, in Germany, to having these SME companies or the smaller companies on a global perspective, yeah, giving a chance, yeah, to create new technologies and new products. Yeah.
I think what we do today is a good step in the right direction. Gentlemen, thank you so much for this short panel discussion, for your clear words. We landed on time, 11:15. As you know, you have a coffee break now. So please join together outside and have a good cup of coffee and some Austrian cake.